My name is Claire Adams. I'm 27 years old, and last week I graduated with an MBA from Stanford, something no one in my family ever dreamed of. You'd think that would make me the golden child, but in the Adams household, I've always been the shadow. My younger sister, Ashley, the future doctor, is our parents' crown jewel, while I'm just the one behind a desk, paying bills no one ever thanked me for. For years, I told myself it didn't matter, that if I worked harder, they'd finally see me. But deep down, I've always known I was the black sheep in my own home. What I didn't know was that the night meant to celebrate my success would become the night everything unraveled, when my parents would say something so cruel it would break our family forever. And in that moment, I realized the daughter they never wanted was about to disappear for good. Has someone ever spoken words so cruel you couldn't unhear them, especially on a day meant to celebrate you? The dinner was set at Delmonico's, one of Seattle's most upscale restaurants. White linen tablecloths, amber chandeliers, and the quiet hum of money in the air. I had reserved the private dining room myself, paid for every plate, every bottle of wine, every goddamn thing on that table. Not because I needed to impress anyone, but because after years of juggling jobs, loans, and self-doubt, I finally wanted to celebrate something I'd earned. I greeted every guest with a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. Professors, co-workers, my manager from the consulting firm where I'd interned and just landed a full-time offer, friends from grad school beaming with pride. Then came my parents, Susan and Robert Adams, fashionably late as always, dressed sharp and polished like they were the ones being honored tonight. They brought no flowers, not even a card. Ashley didn't come. She was on shift at the hospital, apparently, or maybe she just didn't feel like showing up to something that didn't involve her. I introduced my parents to everyone. There were firm handshakes, kind words, compliments I had secretly longed for them to hear. "You must be so proud of Claire," one of my professors said, smiling warmly. "Stanford MBA is no small feat." My mother laughed softly and replied, "Oh, we're proud of both our daughters, but Ashley, our youngest, she's in med school, working long shifts in the ER, saving lives, that's real impact." A pause. You could almost hear the silverware hesitate. My smile stayed frozen, like it had been nailed to my face. A few moments later, my manager stood up to make a toast. He spoke about my work ethic, how I'd led a team of interns and held the project together under pressure. "Claire Iyer is one of the sharpest young consultants I've ever worked with," he said. "She's going to do big things." Applause followed, sincere and loud. I turned to my parents, searching their faces for any flicker of pride. My dad gave a soft chuckle. "She's smart, sure, but Ashley, she's out there saving lives every day. That's the kind of pride you can't put a price on." My throat tightened. It was like they'd rehearsed these lines, as if my entire existence was just the opening act before the headliner, Ashley the Savior. People at the table exchanged awkward glances. One of my colleagues, God bless her, leaned toward my mom and said, "Still, you must be proud of Claire. This is an incredible achievement." My mother smiled politely. "It's fine, I suppose." Then my father chimed in, turning the conversation again to Ashley's night shifts, her med school rotations, the patients she'd helped. "Compared to a doctor," he said with a shrug, "an MBA just doesn't feel the same." That was it, the dam cracked. I stood up, the chair scraping against the floor like a scream. The room fell silent. My voice didn't shake like I thought it would. "Do you know what I had to do to get here? How many nights I didn't sleep? How many hours I worked while studying just so I wouldn't be a burden to you?" My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. My father stared at me like I was making a scene. "I paid for Ashley's tuition, I sent money when the lights got shut off, I went without so this family could stay afloat, and still, I'm just the one behind a desk." The air turned thick. People held their breath. I wasn't even speaking to the room anymore. I was speaking to two people who had never really seen me. If I'm as worthless as you say, then who's been keeping this family together all these years? My father stood up, red-faced. He didn't yell. He didn't have to. His words sliced cleaner than a blade. "We wish we never had a daughter like you." Gasps, the clink of a spoon dropping onto a plate. My vision blurred for half a second, but not from tears, from clarity. I looked around the table at all the stunned faces, at the people who respected me for who I was, while the ones who raised me had just erased me with a single sentence. I turned back to them, calm now. "If that's what you wish, then maybe it's time I start living like I was never theirs." And I walked out. If I was never wanted, maybe it's time I start living like I was never theirs. I didn't cry that night, Not when I left the restaurant, not when I reached the sidewalk, heels clicking against wet pavement under the soft drizzle that's just part of life in Seattle. Not even when I got home, slipped off my heels, and sat in silence in my dark apartment. But the next morning, when I opened my phone and saw missed calls from my parents, 11 of them, and a cold text that simply read, "You embarrassed us. I hope you're proud of yourself," that's when something inside me cracked. Not with sadness, with exhaustion, because this wasn't a one-night thing. It wasn't new. It was just the latest headline in a story that had been playing out my entire life. I wasn't shocked. I was just finally done. Growing up, I was the girl who blended into the wallpaper while Ashley sparkled in the center of the room. We're only 2 years apart, but the difference in how we were treated might as well have been a lifetime. Ashley got piano recitals, trophies for just showing up, birthday parties with 3-layer cakes and balloons that spelled her name in gold. Me, I once got a cake that said, "Happy birthday, Ashel." Oh, and Claire in rushed, cramped icing in the bottom corner. It became a family joke. They laughed. I didn't. But I smiled anyway. I always smiled. I learned early that achievement didn't matter unless it fit their idea of pride. When I won the regional math competition in high school, I came home beaming, holding the certificate like it meant something. My mom didn't even look up from folding laundry. "That's nice," she said, "but Ashley's volunteering at the hospital. That's real impact." That was the phrase they always used. Real impact. Apparently, impact only counts if there's a white coat involved. I didn't stop trying though. I thought maybe if I became successful enough, they'd finally say the words I'd always wanted to hear. "We're proud of you, Claire." So I worked. I worked through undergrad, 3 jobs at a time. Made lattes at 6 a.m., cleaned offices after class, tutored neighborhood kids on weekends. Every dollar I earned went somewhere else. To help with bills at home, to support Ashley's never-ending list of med school needs. They never asked where the money came from. They just took it like it was owed. Michael used to joke that I was the only person he knew who could calculate a family budget faster than she could calculate her own worth. He said it with a smile, but I always caught the way his eyes softened after. Michael, my best friend since college, the one person who saw through all the pretending. His story wasn't mine, but it rhymed. His dad was ex-military, rigid, and brutal in the way he enforced respect. When Michael chose art over engineering, his father cut him off. But unlike me, Michael stopped chasing approval. "You can't water dead roots, Claire," he once told me. "It's not your fault nothing grows." Back then, I didn't believe him. I thought he was just being cynical. I still thought loyalty meant sacrifice, even if it bled me dry. But now, I was starting to understand. That night after the dinner, Michael called. I didn't answer, but I listened to his voicemail on repeat. "Claire, I'm proud of you. Not just for standing up, but for finally walking away. Call me when you're ready to breathe again." I wasn't ready yet. Not fully. But something was shifting. For so long, I lived with this fragile hope that someday, if I just stayed quiet and worked hard, they'd finally turn and see me. That hope used to be the only thing keeping me going. But now I was starting to wonder if maybe, what if the only way to be free is to stop trying to be loved by people who never will? I didn't pack much when I left my old apartment, just the essentials. My laptop, a few worn-out clothes, the books I couldn't part with, and the single framed photo I still had from college. Me and Michael sitting on the campus lawn, holding coffee cups and grinning like idiots. That was before life got complicated, before I forgot how to smile like that. I moved into a small 1-bedroom in Bellevue. Nothing fancy, just hardwood floors, white walls, and a big window that overlooked a quiet street lined with maple trees. But it was mine, paid for with my own money, decorated by no one's opinion but mine. No Ashley, no Susan, no Robert, just Claire. The first night I slept there, I didn't sleep at all. I lay on the mattress on the floor, no bed frame yet, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence. At first, it felt empty, but the longer I listened, the more I realized it wasn't silence. It was peace, the kind I hadn't known in years. The next morning, I opened my laptop and logged into my bank account. 3 automatic payments were scheduled to hit. One to my parents' utility company, one to Ashley's tuition portal, and one to the family mortgage. I canceled all of them. My hand trembled a little when I clicked confirm, but my chest felt lighter. No explanation, no apology, just enough. I spent the next few weeks building a life that had nothing to do with anyone but me. Work at the consulting firm picked up. My manager assigned me to a major project, a restructuring for a Fortune 500 tech company. I threw myself into it, working late, leading calls, solving problems like second nature. For once, I wasn't doing it for approval. I was doing it for me. And people noticed. I started getting pulled into more meetings. My opinions were asked, not ignored. My name started getting passed around, not as Ashley's sister or the responsible daughter, but as Claire Adams, the rising star. At night, I came home to my quiet apartment, now fully furnished, a soft gray couch, a lamp shaped like a tree branch, and a tall bookshelf for all the paperbacks I'd kept in boxes for years. I planted succulents on the windowsill, lit candles, played jazz while I cooked for one. It felt indulgent, it felt selfish, it felt good. Michael came by one Saturday afternoon with a bottle of wine and 2 giant bags of Thai takeout. "Still breathing?" he asked, stepping into my apartment like he owned the place. I nodded. "Actually, I think I'm starting to live." We sat on the floor, eating noodles and drinking cheap Cabernet, laughing about old college stories. For a while, it was just easy, simple, the way life used to be before I tried so hard to prove I mattered. "I like this place," he said, looking around. "It feels like you." "I think I'm still figuring out what that means," I admitted. He raised his glass, to figuring it out. We clinked glasses, and I felt something warm bloom in my chest. It wasn't pride, it wasn't relief, it was something quieter. Self-acceptance maybe, or at least the beginning of it. That night, as I folded a throw blanket across the back of my couch, my phone buzzed. Mom, then again, Dad, no voicemails, just missed calls, one after another, 10 in total. I didn't answer. I didn't even listen. Instead, I silenced the phone, curled up under the blanket, and stared out the window at the blinking street lights. They wanted silence. I gave them silence, but now they'd hear it louder than ever. They wanted silence. I gave them silence, but now they'll hear it louder than ever. It started with a knock, not the kind you expect, not hesitant or polite. It was sharp, loud, insistent, the kind of knock that doesn't ask for permission but demands attention. I looked at the time, 4:13 p.m. on a Tuesday. I had just gotten home from work, still wearing my heels, blazer halfway off my shoulders. When I opened the door, I froze. Standing there as if nothing had happened, were my parents Robert and Susan Adams, dressed like they were visiting someone they still owned. My father in his pressed button-down and leather shoes, my mother with her arms folded tightly over her beige trench coat, lips already pursed like she was bracing for war. I didn't move, I didn't speak. "We need to talk," my mother said. The last time we spoke, she told me I'd embarrassed the family. Now she was standing at my door like the past didn't exist. They walked past me without waiting for an invitation. I closed the door behind them slowly, like I was trying not to wake a bomb. They sat on my couch, the one I bought with my own money, in the living room I paid for with every sleepless night and every cent they never said thank you for. I stayed standing. "Claire," my father began, clearing his throat like he was about to deliver a business pitch, "Ashley's had some setbacks." Setbacks, that's what he called it. Her hospital internship was cut, staff reductions, my mother continued, and her tuition, well, the remaining balance is overdue. She might not be able to continue the program. And I asked, my voice flat. And my mother snapped, "We need your help." There it was, no apology, no regret, just the old song, different verse. "Help," I repeated, as if trying the word out for the first time. "Claire, you know how important this is," my dad said. "If she falls behind now, she could lose everything." "She?" I asked. "Or you?" My mother's eyes narrowed. "Don't be petty." I laughed, a soft, bitter sound that surprised even me. I gave up years of my life for this family. Sent money when the heat got shut off, covered Ashley's textbooks, her rent, her food. I went without so she could have everything. And the one night I asked for something back, you humiliated me. We were upset, my father snapped. You disrespected us. I took a step forward. My heels hit the floor with a heavy click. No, you disrespected me for years. Quietly, constantly, you made it a routine. You didn't raise me. You drained me. My mother stood now, too. We're your parents. We brought you into this world. And I carried it on my back while you praised someone else for standing on my shoulders. The silence between us stretched thin, tight, like a piano wire. One flick, and it would all snap. You don't get to come here now and act like that didn't happen, I said, my voice low but steady. You don't get to pretend you didn't say you wish I'd never been born. My father opened his mouth, then closed it. I walked to the door and held it open. If you came here to apologize, I'd listen, but if you came to ask for more, that ended the night you disowned me. Neither of them moved. Claire, this is family, my mother said, her voice rising. Blood is blood. I shook my head. Not when it's poisoned. I pointed toward the hallway. They walked out, stiff and silent, but before she crossed the threshold, my mother turned back. You'll regret this. One day, you'll realize you need your family. I stared her straight in the eyes. I already have a family, just not you. The door clicked shut, and for the first time, I felt nothing. No guilt, no fear, no second guessing, just air. Cold, still, free. This time, I didn't cry when I closed the door. I smiled. The weeks after I closed that door passed in quiet momentum. No more calls, no more texts, just silence. Exactly the kind they once demanded from me. Only now, it wasn't the submissive silence of a daughter bowing her head. It was the silence of someone who had finally learned to speak in other ways. At the firm, I threw myself into work. I led meetings with confidence that felt unfamiliar at first, like wearing a suit tailored for someone else, until I realized it had always been mine. People listened when I talked. Clients asked for me by name. And then came the project, a multi-million-dollar restructuring for a tech giant based out of Redmond, the kind of account that could make or break a young consultant's career. My manager handed it to me without hesitation. You've earned this, he said. Don't look back. And I didn't. For 6 weeks, I lived and breathed that project. Strategy sessions, late-night slide decks, pivot tables that danced across screens until my eyes blurred. But I didn't feel burnt out. I felt driven, empowered, in control. At night, I returned to my apartment, now fully furnished. The couch with its soft throw pillows, the bookshelves lined with stories I finally had time to read, candles flickering quietly in corners. It felt like home, not the place I was born into, but the one I built, brick by emotional brick. Michael dropped by often, sometimes just to sit in silence and eat whatever leftovers I had, other times to play records and argue over old playlists from college. You're different, he said one night, sipping red wine on my couch. I raised an eyebrow. Different how? You're whole, like you finally stopped waiting to be chosen. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The warmth in my chest said everything. Then came the article. Our project had outperformed every expectation. The client renewed their contract, doubled their investment, and publicly credited the brilliant strategic insight of my team. My name was front and center. A local business magazine reached out for an interview. I agreed, hesitantly. I wasn't used to being seen, but I told the truth. Not just about the project, but about the path that got me there. Without naming names, I spoke about what it meant to grow up unseen, to fight for recognition that never came, and how I had finally stopped seeking it. The story ran under the headline, Rising Star Claire Adams on Leading Through Resilience. LinkedIn exploded. Hundreds of likes, then thousands, DMs from strangers saying my words felt like theirs, grown adults admitting they cried. One line was reposted again and again. You don't have to earn love from people who use it as a weapon. Michael sent me a screenshot, circled the quote. Damn, Claire, his text read. You started a quiet revolution. But not everyone was quiet. The emails started coming from my parents. Short, sharp. You've made a fool of this family. How dare you speak about us publicly? Ashley's suffering, and you're out there bragging. I didn't respond. They tried guilt, then blame, then silence again. I stayed still. For once, I didn't feel the need to defend myself, to fix things, to be the glue. I had finally let it break, and somehow, I didn't break with it. I stood in front of my floor-to-ceiling window one evening, glass of wine in hand, the Seattle skyline flickering like it was cheering for me. I thought of that girl, me, 2 years ago, sending home half her paycheck, hoping for a thank you that would never come. I thought of that dinner, that sentence. We wish we never had a daughter like you. And then I thought, I used to think silence meant defeat. Now I know silence is power. The party was small, intentionally so. No fancy venue, no guest list full of people I barely knew, just my closest friends, co-workers who'd stood beside me through the chaos, and Michael, of course, who brought 2 bottles of red wine and an obnoxiously oversized cheese board he proudly assembled himself. It wasn't a celebration of status. It was a celebration of survival. I had just signed a long-term leadership contract with the firm. Not a promotion someone handed me, a position I earned and negotiated on my own terms. No one else's shadow trailing behind me, no more strings pulling from the past. The apartment glowed with soft amber light. The music played low in the background. Jazz, indie, something easy. Through the wide windows, Puget Sound sparkled under the night sky, and the city hummed like it was breathing with me. Laughter echoed through the living room. Someone toasted to me, and I laughed, really laughed, not out of politeness, not out of habit, but because joy felt real again. No one mentioned Ashley, no one asked about my parents, no one looked at me with pity. Just pride, just love. Michael clinked his glass against mine and leaned in. "Look at this," he said, motioning around the room. "This is the family you built, Claire." I nodded. "Yeah, the kind that chose me back." Later that night, after everyone left, I stood alone on the balcony. The breeze from the water was cold but clean, brushing through my hair like a reset button. Below, the lights of Seattle stretched out like constellations. I sipped what was left of my wine and thought about everything that had led me here. The sacrifices no one saw, the years I gave and gave until I had nothing left for myself, the dinner, the words I'll never unhear. But I also thought of the first time I stood up, the first night I slept in this apartment, the first time someone said they were proud of me and meant it. And I realized something. Maybe you can't choose the family you're born into, but you can choose which pieces of that story you carry with you and which ones you leave behind. Maybe love that comes with conditions isn't really love at all. And maybe the truest kind of freedom is learning to live without needing what was never freely given. Inside, my phone buzzed, another message, from a stranger this time, someone who read the article, who found me through the storm, who wrote, "Your story helped me finally walk away from the pain I thought I had to accept." I smiled. I wasn't alone anymore, and neither were they. I stepped back inside and turned off the lights, the room still warm with the echo of voices, the scent of red wine and candles lingering in the air. I'd spent years begging for acknowledgement. Now I was done begging. I was building, I was choosing. And for the first time in my life, I knew exactly who I was. Not someone's daughter, not someone's backup plan, not someone's invisible lifeline, just me, whole enough, free. I'm not the daughter they wanted, but I am finally mine.